When Eduardo Mendoza, a 52-year-old billionaire, was having dinner at the most exclusive restaurant in Madrid, the last thing he expected was for a 23-year-old waitress to approach him and say, "Excuse me, sir, but my mother has a ring exactly like yours." Eduardo looked at his engagement ring, the one that had belonged to his family for generations, and felt as if the world stopped. There were only 3 rings like it in the world. One was his, another had disappeared 25 years ago, and the third should have been buried with the woman he had most loved and lost forever. Madrid, November 2024. The restaurant La Gastronomica in the Salamanca neighborhood was where the Spanish elite gathered. Eduardo Mendoza, 52 years old, a hotel magnate who owned a luxury hotel chain valued at 500 million euros, was dining alone at his usual table by the window. Eduardo looked like a successful man, but one tormented. His graying hair was perfectly styled, he wore a 3,000 euro Italian suit, and on his left hand sparkled a unique ring, a white gold signet with a blue sapphire surrounded by diamonds. It was a family heirloom over 200 years old. He had come to the restaurant to celebrate alone the 20th anniversary of the company he had founded with his late wife, Carmen. But the celebration felt hollow without her. Carmen had died in a car accident 5 years ago, taking with her all their dreams for the future. "Would you like more wine, Mr. Mendoza?" asked a soft voice. Eduardo looked up and saw a young waitress about 23 years old. She was brunette, with expressive brown eyes and a shy smile. She wore the restaurant's impeccable uniform, white shirt and black vest. "Yes, please," Eduardo said, looking at her name tag, Sophia. As Sophia poured the wine, Eduardo noticed that the young woman was looking at him strangely, as if she had seen something that disturbed her. "Is something wrong?" Eduardo asked. Sophia hesitated for a moment, biting her lower lip. "Excuse me, sir, but may I ask you something about your ring?" Eduardo looked at his left hand, surprised. "My ring?" "Yes." Sophia leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "It's just that my mother has a ring exactly like yours." Eduardo felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. He stood still, staring at the young woman in disbelief. "That's impossible," he murmured. "This ring is unique. It's been in my family for generations." "I know it sounds strange," said Sophia nervously, "but when I saw your ring, I nearly dropped the tray. It's identical to the one my mother has ever since I can remember." Eduardo felt his heart begin to race. There were only 3 rings like that in the world. His great-grandfather had commissioned them in 1890 for his 3 sons. One was his, passed down from his father. The second had disappeared 25 years ago when his twin brother Carlos died in a mountaineering accident. And the third— "What's your mother's name?" Eduardo asked with a trembling voice. "Carmen Ruiz," Sophia replied. "Why? Do you know her?" Eduardo felt the world collapse around him. Carmen. His late wife's name was Carmen, but her last name had been Mendoza, not Ruiz, and she had died 5 years ago. "How old is your mother?" Eduardo asked, struggling to keep his composure. 47, Sophia answered. "Mr. Mendoza, you've gone very pale." Eduardo tried to process the information. Carmen would be exactly 47 if she were alive, but that was impossible. He had been at her funeral, had seen her coffin. "Sophia," Eduardo said hoarsely, "I need you to do me a very important favor. Could you show me a photo of your mother?" Sophia looked at him, confused, but pulled out her phone, searched in her gallery, and showed him a photo. Eduardo looked at the screen, and the world stopped completely. It was Carmen. His Carmen. Alive. Eduardo grabbed the phone with trembling hands, staring at the photo as if it were an apparition. It was Carmen, without a doubt. Her hair was shorter, she looked a few years older, but it was her. The same green eyes, the same smile. the same way of tilting her head. "Mr. Mendoza?" Sophia looked at him, concerned. "Are you okay?" "This woman," Eduardo said, pointing at the photo. "Where does she live?" "In Cuenca, sir." "Why? Do you know her?" Eduardo stood up suddenly, knocking over his wine glass. The other diners in the restaurant looked over, curious. "Sophia, I need you to tell me everything about your mother." "Everything? Sir, you're scaring me. What's going on?" Eduardo sat down again, trying to calm himself. "I'm sorry, it's just, your mother looks a lot like someone I used to know." "Well," Sophia said, still nervous, "my mother's name is Carmen Ruiz. She's lived in Cuenca for as long as I can remember. She used to work as a secretary until she took early retirement 2 years ago." "And your father?" "I don't have a father. Well, my mother says he died when I was a baby. An accident at work." Eduardo felt goosebumps rise on his arms. "An accident at work?" "Yes, he was an architect. My mother says he died in the collapse of a building under construction." Eduardo had been an architect before going into the hotel business, and he remembered perfectly that he had faked his death in a construction accident to run away with Carmen 25 years ago. But the Carmen in the photo was his wife, the one who had supposedly died 5 years ago. "Sophia," Eduardo said seriously, "when is your birthday?" "March 15th. Why all these questions?" Eduardo did a quick calculation. If Sophia was 23, she had been born in March 2001, exactly 9 months after the last time he had seen Carmen alive before the supposed car accident. "My God," Eduardo murmured. "It can't be." "What can't be?" Eduardo looked at Sophia with new eyes. Now that he knew what to look for, he could see the resemblance: his nose, her eyebrow shape, those long, elegant hands. "Sophia," Eduardo said with a broken voice, "has your mother ever mentioned someone named Eduardo?" The young woman frowned. Well, sometimes when she drinks a bit of wine, she mentions an Eduardo and gets sad, but she never wants to talk about him." Eduardo felt tears well up in his eyes. Carmen was alive, and if his suspicions were right, Sophia was his daughter. "I have to see your mother," Eduardo said, standing up again. "Right now." "But sir, it's 10 p.m., and she's in Cuenca, 2 hours away." "I don't care. Can you call her? Tell her to come?" Sophia stepped back. "Mr. Mendoza, you're scaring me. What is going on?" Eduardo realized he was acting like a madman. He took a deep breath and tried to calm down. "Sophia, what I'm going to tell you may sound incredible, but I think your mother is my wife." "Your wife? But that's impossible. My mother isn't married. My wife Carmen died in a car accident 5 years ago. Or at least, that's what I believed." Sophia looked at him like he had lost his mind. "Sir, my mother hasn't had any accident. She's alive and well in Cuenca." Eduardo took off his ring and showed it to Sophia. "It's exactly like your mother's." Sophia examined the ring closely. "It's identical. It even has the same inscription inside: Eternal Love." Eduardo shivered. Only Carmen and he knew about that inscription. "Sophia," Eduardo said with determination, "I have to go to Cuenca tonight. Will you come with me?" "But sir—" "I'll pay you 1,000 euros to come with me. I just need you to take me to your mother." Sophia looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but if it turns out you're crazy, I'm calling the police." Eduardo smiled for the first time in years. "If I'm crazy, you can call whoever you want." Are you enjoying this story? Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's continue the video. Eduardo's Audi raced down the highway toward Cuenca at 11 p.m. Sophia sat in the passenger seat, still nervous but intrigued. "Can you please explain what's really going on?" she asked. Eduardo kept his eyes on the road. 5 years ago, My wife Carmen died in a car crash, or at least, that's what they told me. And you think my mother is your wife? The rings, the name, the age, your birth date, everything lines up. They arrived in Cuenca at 1 a.m. Sofia directed Eduardo to a small apartment in the old town. They climbed the stairs in silence. Sofia knocked gently. Mama, it's me. Sofia. The door opened and a woman in a robe appeared, her hair tousled from sleep. Eduardo felt his heart stop. It was Carmen. His Carmen. Alive and real. Standing in front of him after 5 years of believing her dead. Carmen looked at Eduardo, and all the color drained from her face. Eduardo, she whispered. Hello, Carmen, Eduardo said, his voice trembling. We have a lot to talk about. Carmen looked at Sofia with panicked eyes. What have you done? Mama, is it true? Is he my father? Carmen covered her face with her hands and began to cry. Come in, she murmured finally. It was inevitable that this day would come. The small living room of the apartment was silent. Carmen had put on a jacket over her robe and stared at Eduardo with red, tearful eyes. How long have you known I'm alive? Eduardo asked. Always. I never believed you died in that construction accident. Then, why did you fake your death? Carmen took a deep breath. Because I found out what you were really doing. The business with Raul Vasquez, the money laundering, the threats. Eduardo tensed. How did you find out about Raul? He followed me one day. He told me that if I didn't cooperate with him, both you and I would end up dead. Sofia looked at them, confused. Who is Raul Vasquez? A criminal, Eduardo said bitterly. Someone I should never have done business with. Carmen continued. Raul offered me a deal. If I faked my death and disappeared, he would leave you alone. But if I stayed, he would kill us both. And you accepted? I was pregnant, Eduardo. 2 months pregnant. I couldn't risk our baby's life. Eduardo looked at Sofia with new eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Because you would have tried to stop me, and we both would have ended up dead. Sofia stood up abruptly. You're saying I've lived 23 years based on a lie? I did it to protect you, Carmen said. You told me my father had died. I grew up thinking I was an orphan. Eduardo walked over to Sofia. I'm sorry. If I had known you existed. After I faked my death, Raul left you alone, Carmen continued. But he threatened to kill us if I ever tried to contact you. And all these years, I've lived in fear. Until 5 years ago, when Raul died in a gang war, I saw the news in the paper. Finally, we were free. Then why didn't you come back to me? Because too much time had passed, and I wasn't the same woman anymore. Sofia headed for the door. I need fresh air. I need to think. She left the apartment, leaving Eduardo and Carmen alone for the first time in over 20 years. Silence filled the small living room, heavy with the weight of more than 2 decades of separation. She looks like you, Carmen finally said. She has your temper, Eduardo replied with a sad smile. Carmen removed the ring from her finger and held it out to Eduardo. I guess I should give this back to you. Eduardo shook his head. That ring belongs to you. It always has. Eduardo, after your supposed death, I left all that dirty business behind. I sold everything. I walked away from that life. Really? Raul had gotten what he wanted. He took away the only thing that ever truly mattered to me. Carmen looked at him with new eyes. That makes me happy. Carmen, I know many years have passed, but do you think we could try getting to know each other again? Carmen hesitated. Eduardo, we're not the same people we were 25 years ago. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe now we can build something better. Just then, the door opened and Sofia came back in. She had been crying but had calmed down. I've been thinking, said Sofia, and I've decided I want to get to know my father, but with conditions. Eduardo nodded. Whatever you need. First, no more lies. Ever again. Agreed, Eduardo said. Second, I want to get to know your life slowly. Of course, Carmen said. And third, I want you to promise that you'll never put business before family again. Eduardo approached Sofia. I promise. These last 5 years, I've learned that all the money in the world is worth nothing without family. Sofia looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, let's try. Carmen walked over and hugged them both. Maybe it's not too late to be a family. Eduardo felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. 6 months later, the terrace of Eduardo's most luxurious hotel in Valencia was decorated for a special celebration: Sofia's 24th birthday. For the first time in her life, she was celebrating it with both her parents. The past months had been a slow but beautiful process of getting to know each other. Sofia had left her job as a waitress to study hotel management, with Eduardo paying for her studies. Carmen had moved to Madrid to an apartment near Eduardo's, and slowly, they had been rebuilding their relationship. How do I look? Sofia asked, showing off the blue dress Carmen had given her. You look beautiful, Carmen said, adjusting her necklace. Eduardo walked over with a small box in his hands. Sofia, there's something I want to give you. Sofia opened the box, and inside was a ring. It wasn't identical to Eduardo and Carmen's, but it had the same design, adapted in rose gold. I had this ring made especially for you. It's part of the family tradition, but it's yours alone. Sofia put the ring on and began to cry. Dad. It was the first time she had called him that. Eduardo felt tears well up in his eyes. I love you, my daughter. Carmen joined them and hugged them both. I never thought this day would come. During dinner, Sofia stood to make a toast. 6 months ago, I thought I was fatherless. Today, I have a full family. It hasn't been easy, and we're still learning how to be parents and daughter after so many lost years. But I believe the best families aren't the ones born perfect. They're the ones that choose to work to become one. Eduardo raised his glass. To second chances. Carmen raised hers. To love that survives time. Sofia smiled. And to families who find each other when they least expect it. 3 years later, Eduardo and Carmen remarried in a small but emotional ceremony. Sofia was the maid of honor and walked her mother down the aisle. Eduardo had transferred most of his hotels to a charitable foundation, keeping only 2 to live comfortably. Carmen now ran the foundation, helping separated families, turning her pain into purpose. Sofia had graduated with honors and now managed one of the family hotels, proving she had inherited both her father's business sense and her mother's compassion. One night, as they had dinner on the terrace of their home outside Madrid, Sofia raised her glass of wine. You know what's the strangest thing about all of this? What? Eduardo and Carmen asked in unison. That it all started because I recognized a ring. If I hadn't been working at that restaurant that day, if I hadn't seen Dad's ring, maybe we'd never have found each other. Eduardo took Carmen and Sofia's hands. Fate has mysterious ways of bringing families together. Carmen smiled. Sometimes the most precious things are found when you stop looking. And sometimes, Sofia added, happy endings come when you least expect them. After years of waiting, Eduardo looked at the ring on his hand, then at the rings on Carmen and Sofia's fingers. 3 rings, 3 lives that had been separated and found their way back together. Their story proved that true love can survive decades of separation, that families can be rebuilt even after years of necessary lies, and that sometimes miracles come disguised as coincidences in elegant restaurants.